While the Kremlin and its propaganda arm are reporting on the restoration of occupied Mariupol, local residents have revealed what is really going on in the city captured by Russia. In a video posted online, highlighted by Ukrainian blogger Denis Kazansky, residents of Mariupol showed a house that, according to the occupiers, has supposedly been fully restored, when in reality only a facade has been added to create a pretty picture for Russian propagandists to film. 2.5 entrances are burnt out. That's just it. I've run out of strength and patience. Look how shamelessly they're treating us. 3 years in, and soon it'll be the 4th. The house looks beautiful on the outside. Everything seems fine. And they even got us some railings, but inside it's a nightmare, says a resident. That is, the building's facade has been cosmetically renovated, while the interior is in a dilapidated state and completely unfit for habitation. In particular, they painted the old doors in the house, but in the documents they were presented as new. Because the building has been standing for 3 years, these 2 entrances aren't heated, so it's damp again. Everything's just falling apart. The contractor says there's no money. The same resident continues. She also said she couldn't get an appointment with the occupation authorities in Mariupol to complain about the lack of proper repairs to her building. These same authorities claim they have nothing to do with the restoration of the buildings. The resident then contacted Putin on a direct line, after which she was promised that her house would be restored in August. But the Russian dictator's promise was not fulfilled. So restoration has been going on for 3 years. Formally, the process continues. They report on it. They say, look, we're restoring so many houses, but there are no results, except for some stories on Russian television. The blogger commented on the residents' complaints. Russia says it has built a total of over 5,000 new apartments in 70 new buildings for the residents of Mariupol. By the end of 2024, the authorities claimed that almost all Mariupol's homes had been rebuilt. The progress made on these construction efforts can be seen in satellite images, but the traces of the city's destruction are still evident, especially in the eastern part of the city. Residents complain on social media that they have still not been given a replacement for their destroyed homes and are still homeless. They also say that the authorities have seized the homes of residents who had fled the city and given them to others. Many apartments in the prestigious new buildings, on the other hand, are being sold, mostly to Russians moving to Mariupol. The influx of Russians is only one part of the Russification process. After the conquest of Mariupol, the occupiers removed Ukrainian symbols from the cityscape. Streets were renamed, paintings on house facades were covered over, and monuments were removed.
The Russian-American peace plan includes, among other things, declaring Russian the official language in Ukraine and resuming the work of the Russian Orthodox Church in Kiev-controlled territory. The Ukrainian leadership will not accept this plan in its current form, the Financial Times reports, citing informed sources. As the publication notes, the peace plan is in the early stages of development, but was already conveyed to Kyiv this week by U.S. Presidential Envoy Steve Witkoff through Secretary of the National Security and Defense Council of Ukraine Rustem Umerov. According to people directly familiar with the document, the draft plan requires Ukraine to cede Donbas, including territories not yet occupied, reduce the number of the Ukrainian armed forces by half, abandon key categories of weapons, reduce U.S. military aid to Ukraine, to grant the Russian language the status of an official state language in Ukraine, grant official status to the local branch of the Russian Orthodox Church. Recognition of Crimea and Donbas as Russian territory is one of the main conditions of the plan. According to the Financial Times, the adoption of this plan would potentially leave Ukraine vulnerable to future Russian aggression. A source familiar with the document described it as very general and heavily biased in Russia's favor. Another informed source called it very convenient for Putin. Officials in Kiev familiar with the plan told the publication's author that the document meets the Kremlin's maximalist demands and that Ukraine will not accept it without significant changes. The leak of the document has raised concerns in Washington, Brussels, and Kiev. Experts note that the implementation of such a plan, especially the Crimea issue, is extremely difficult from both a political and legal perspective. According to analysts, the leaked text may be more aimed at testing the positions of the parties, gauging the reaction of international public opinion, and defining the framework for possible negotiations. Trump's proposal for U.S. security guarantees as a kind of consolation prize for Ukraine is also more than strange, the Telegraph columnist Daniel DePetris notes. Trump's proposal for U.S. security guarantees as a kind of consolation prize for Ukraine is also more than strange, the analyst says. First, it contradicts Trump's entire premise of abdicating security obligations that shouldn't be demanded of the U.S. military. In fact, such a scheme runs counter to the America First principle. Secondly, how would bringing Ukraine under the American security umbrella differ from offering Kyiv NATO membership, a decision that successive U.S. administrations have avoided for 2 decades, as it would inevitably anger Russia and require a unanimous decision within the alliance, he notes. Some NATO members may even oppose U.S. security guarantees, fearing that Trump and his successors will expect them to help defend Ukraine if the situation deteriorates further. Russians, for their part, will likely view U.S. security guarantees as irrelevant in and of themselves. The most important thing is also unclear: will U.S. security guarantees mean anything to Ukraine, and will the Americans be able to ensure their implementation? Petraeus emphasizes, the Biden and Trump administrations disagreed on many issues, but both held the position that it was not worth engaging in a conventional conflict with the world's largest nuclear power just to protect Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Turkey Wednesday in search of diplomatic support for Ukraine's fight against Russia. According to Associated Press in Ankara, Zelensky began his visit by honoring the memory of Mustafa Kemal Ataturk, the first president of Turkey, at the Ataturk Mausoleum. Later, he will meet Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan as part of his efforts to diplomatically isolate Russian President Vladimir Putin and bring more international pressure to bear on him. Putin has so far resisted making compromises, despite U.S. pressure. Foremost, we will discuss maximum capabilities to ensure that Ukraine achieves a just peace, Zelensky said of his talks with Erdogan, adding that the leaders have good relations. Zelensky also said, "We see some positions and signals from the United States, well, let's see tomorrow." He didn't elaborate, but tough new American sanctions on Russia's oil industry, devised to push Putin to the negotiating table, are due to take effect on Friday. A senior Turkish official initially said that U.S. Special Envoy Steve Witkoff would join Zelensky in Turkey, but backtracked later in the day and said Witkoff wouldn't be coming. The official spoke on the condition of anonymity Tuesday because he wasn't permitted to speak publicly about the arrangements.